Oklahoma's hidden Black history.
Oklahoma had 45 black towns and municipalities. It was capital of black self-determination. Black people came for the same reason as whites, for new possibility.
There's a public library, a black library. There are chili houses, cafes, restaurants. There's just everything there.
There were a dozen surgeons and doctors. There were several lawyers. There was a black-owned photography studio.
To make African Americans wealthy, landowners, entrepreneurs, they both knew what the state of Oklahoma was offering.
Oklahoma represents a unique time period in Black history that most African Americans are unaware of, but not many people know this, or that the town still contains prominent remnants of the beginning of Black glory and Renaissance, the 13 all-Black towns. Well, I'm here to change that. Oklahoma was once thought to be the land of opportunities, especially for African Americans. To this day, it can be seen as the Black capital of all America. And for good reason. Oklahoma was known for its Black Wall Street. But what most of y'all don't know is that Oklahoma actually had around 100 Wall Streets. Of course, these were all smaller versions, but they were prominent enough to be noticed, and some of them still exist today. But how did Oklahoma get these exclusive Black towns during an era of intense racial opposition? Allow me to explain. Oklahoma was home to as many as 50 prospering all-Black towns in the 1920s. Though these towns were primarily occupied for farming and agricultural purposes, Black-owned businesses soon started to spring up in and around the areas as well. What began as small farming communities quickly turned into full-fledged towns with schools, churches, stores, and more. Oklahoma was also home to one of the first all-Black theaters in American history, the Black Theater of Ardmore. That's right. When discriminative segregation laws prohibited Blacks from entering entertainment houses, they built their own. Despite the oppressive Jim Crow laws and a mass Black exodus from these areas, 13 of these towns still exist to this day. These towns include Bowley, Clearview, Brooksville, Grayson, Lima, Langston, Redbird, Summit, Rentisville, Taft, Vernon, Tallahassee, and TATUMS. Bowley is the largest, most prosperous, and prominent of these all-Black towns, named after the railroad official J.B. Bowley. The history of how these Black towns came into existence is particularly interesting because it involved the intermingling of two diverse races, the American Indians and the African Americans. Before the Civil War, the 5 civilized Indian American tribes owned numerous Black chattel slaves. However, during the Civil War in America, the 5 tribes chose to side with the South and lost in battle. After the loss, the lands of the American Indians were taken, and the historical event of the Trail of Tears happened. The end of the Civil War also saw the emancipation of enslaved Black people. The African Americans no longer belonged to the Indians or to white Americans. At the same time, Oklahoma was promoted as a promised land to Black Americans, where they would receive fields for farming. With this in mind, numerous Black families landed in Oklahoma and started small farming communities from 1865 to the 1920s. These communities then grew into the well-known Black towns of the time. As we all know, the Black community's drive for excellence and spirit of hard work is unmatched. Black Americans lived free from racial discrimination and prejudice. Community members could rely on each other for all sorts of assistance, and open farmers markets would help the community grow and become self-reliant. It wasn't long before these towns became a central point for Black prosperity. American Indians also settled around these small towns, and the two communities cooperated with each other for mutual security and economic growth. Since both communities were frequently persecuted, there were numerous reasons for them to join hands and establish their own independent lands with help from one another. Oklahoma was the hub of prosperity, unity, and growth for the Black community. At this point, E.P. McCabe, the former state auditor of Kansas, pushed Congress with legislation to declare Oklahoma as the first all-Black state. But this dream remained just that, as Congress rejected the appeal. Before the towns could progress further, strict and highly prejudiced laws were established in America that severely hindered Black Americans' flourishing. Strict Jim Crow laws were established throughout America, and racial segregation was firmly established. Disillusioned by the state of affairs in what was supposed to be the new Black Mecca, many African Americans fled their towns in search of better opportunities. Over the years, the 50 black towns dwindled as the black population reduced, and now only 13 of these exist in the 21st century. The all-black state dream was never actualized. But Oklahoma did see numerous accomplishments being achieved by the black community, which quickly changed their status in the country. Despite the resistance, the 13 historic all-black towns are a small reminder of what the African American community is capable of. That's it for now, folks, but keep watching this space for more interesting content about black history and more. And of course, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and like and share this video so more people can know about brilliant African American history.